Hello? Oh. They're controlling it. So she turned it on. Can I just move this over and then I'll move it back to you? Thank you. Yeah, get out of my way. We're going to start in about a minute, just letting you know. Okay, well, we're going to get this going. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Julie Hahn, and I serve as the CEO of the Sammamish Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our chamber and our board of directors, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to see so many residents here taking part in our community's civic life. I want to thank our event sponsor, Puget Sound Energy, for their continued support for our programs and events. We are most appreciative of Sammamish Presbyterian Church for providing us this great venue for this forum. We'd also like to thank all the candidates for joining us this evening. Invitations were extended to all 9 candidates, and 8 chose to participate. Running for office requires significant time, energy, and dedication, and we sincerely appreciate your commitment to serving the Sammamish community. On the panel, there are 4 current council members and 4 candidates. We would also like to acknowledge the other 3 current council members who are Roisin O'Farrell, Kent Treen, and Pam Stewart. We polled chamber members and invited resident questions. We'd like to thank Paul Stickney, whose input helped clarify complex topics like the comprehensive plan and housing targets in a fair and unbiased way. We believe these pivotal questions and the council candidates' answers will help inform your vote and support our community's growth and enrichment. As a chamber, our mission is to strengthen business and community. That includes helping provide opportunities like this, where residents can meet the candidates, learn about their priorities, and become more informed voters. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Brett Grinslade.
Thank you, Julie. Really appreciate it. Let me get my notes out here. Well, I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting tonight's event. My name is Brett Grinslade. I'll be the moderator. Just a little bit of background. I currently don't live in Sammamish. I guess that makes me pretty good to be a moderator. Having said that, I have a deep connection. Lived here for over 20 years. We still have a house that we hope to move back into after we finish taking care of my parents. My daughter is a high school teacher here in the Plateau. So we have a lot of connection to the city, and so we care a lot about the city's issues. But having said that, my role here is to be the moderator and to help the candidates have a chance to air their positions so that the citizens can decide who can best represent them. This is an opportunity for the community to hear directly from the candidates. We're going to structure it in a way that helps try to achieve equal time for everyone. So we have it structured. I'll kind of go through the ground rules. We have it structured in a way to allow everyone a chance to speak about the topics. Each candidate will get a minute for an opening remarks. And we will start on the end of the table here to make it simpler because we only have a few mics to pass around. When we get to the question section, I'll do a little bit of an intro so we understand the topic and kind of set the groundwork. And the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the question. They'll see the timer here in front of them on the display. I think it may also get displayed somewhere else in the room as well, but we'll have it here to focus on 2 minutes per response. Also, the order of the responses, what we drew at random. So for each question, I'll let you know who the next person is who's going to be taking up the question. If you get to the edge of 2 minutes and you're going up over a little bit, I'll let you know that we need to kind of move on so the next person has a chance to speak so everyone gets a chance to address the topic. Let's see. The other thing we'll just say for the audience, because we have a lot of questions and we have a large number of candidates, we really would like you to keep your appreciation or support of candidates to yourself and talk to them afterwards if you have specific issues you'd like to address, because we're trying to give each of the candidates time to talk about their topics. One other thing that's interesting as well, there's a QR code at the end of your aisle there, which you can use to get a live transcription in 66 different languages if you would like to learn more about what the candidates are saying. So avail yourself of that opportunity, or folks that are on the stream. So with that, we will jump into any other questions before we get started. All right, let me get my order here. So we'll start off on the beginning, and I have my most important piece of paper is the order. Okay, here we go. So we'll start off with Amy. If you'll go ahead and get started, you have 1 minute, and then we'll just pass it down to one person afterwards.
Is this on?
This is just the intro. Yep.
Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm Amy Lamb. I'm a 30-year resident of Sammamish, and I currently serve as your deputy mayor. First off, I want to thank the chamber for hosting and the church for letting us have this great space, and obviously for all you guys for attending. I first ran for city council back in 2021, and I did it for 2 reasons. One, because the council makeup at the time did not reflect the diversity of our community, which is 35% people of color. I have been honored to be the first Asian American and the first woman of color to serve on council. I think representation is really important. It sends a powerful message that people of color have a voice and that our voice matters. And the second reason I ran for council was because our city didn't have a climate action plan. And since that time, we've adopted a climate action plan, and we've adopted numerous other plans, including the Transportation Master Plan, Transit Plan, Housing Plan, among many others. We've also adopted a 2024 comp plan, which will help guide our future growth and our sustainable growth in the future.
Thank you, Amy. We need to move on to
Okay,
Kishinev.
thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jisha Govin, and I'm running as a write-in candidate for position 1 on the Sammamish City Council. I'd like to start off by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity to come here and speak, and also thank all of my fellow Sammamish residents who have turned up here in a pretty large number. So thank you for putting your time in here. I have been in Sammamish for the past 9 years, and like a lot of residents, I moved here for 3 things. For the greenery, for the safety, and the excellent schools. And I think a lot of people moved here for the same reasons. The reason I decided to run is I feel, and like a lot of residents that I've spoken to, that the current council is not reflecting the residents' aspirations, and there is not enough transparency in the decision making. Some of the decisions have been mind-boggling, privatization of Inglewood Streets, for example. So one of the reason I'm running is I believe I want to be the change that I want to see, and I hope that by getting elected to the council, I can reflect the voices of our residents and provide the transparency that everybody wants to see. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sid Gupta, and I'm running for re-election to Sammamish City Council Position 3. Thank you so much to the Chamber and to Sammamish Presbyterian for hosting this event. I've been a native plant steward in Sammamish for 10 years, and in 2018 was awarded Volunteer of the Year from the city. 2016, I received a SAMI Award for Environmental Stewardship. I first ran for council in 2023 after 8 years of service on the city's Parks and Recreation Commission. In under 2 years, we've adopted our Climate Action Plan, a Transit Plan, a Transportation Master Plan, a comprehensive plan that takes a holistic look at our city's housing supply. We've started a Sustainability Commission. We're now a Tree City USA, and we've passed a DEIB North Star document. This year, we're tackling our bike and pedestrian plan. I don't have a car, so giving our residents safe and efficient multimodal transportation is near and dear to my heart, especially as we tackle our aggressive greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. I'm really proud of all this foundational planning work we've done, and that's why I'm so excited to seek re-election and work on implementation. That means making sure trail connections get built, bus stops get improved, crosswalks are installed, we get more amenities on the plateau while helping diversify our revenues, and that we get a community center that serves our seniors, our youth, and our nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Josh Amato. I'm running for Sammamish City Council Position 3. My wife and I have 2 dogs, and we live near the Beaver Lake neighborhood, and we called Sammamish home since 2018. I'm running because I want to create a government that works and delivers results for you. What does that look like? I want to reduce congestion and improve safety along our roads. I want to have an emergency readiness plan that isn't sitting in a binder and that you know what's going to happen if we have an emergency on the plateau. And I also want to have more recreational opportunities for our families. So making our parks 4-season and adding a community center, a true community center to the city of Sammamish. We can adopt that by having a city council that has clear priorities, clear limited priorities, and a responsible budget. And I have the experience to do that. I've been a business owner for 12 years. I served as the vice chair of the Planning Commission. I serve on the Progressive Animal Welfare Society Board of Directors, and I've been the Sammamish Rotary President, where we do a lot of volunteer work in the city and bring educational grants to Sammamish students. I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this for us tonight. As a business owner, I get a lot of value out of the Chamber, and I appreciate all the work that you do.
All right, good evening. My name is Lin Yang, and I am the only candidate in this table who actually grew up here in Sammamish. I went to East Lake High School, graduated in 2001. And I've been someone who's been very involved in the community. When I was in high school, I actually sat on Sammamish City Council as a student representative, and I founded the city's first commission, the Sammamish Youth Board. Now I'm raising my kids here, and I coming home to Sammamish, I realized this community still has a lot of gaps, right? We have an affordability crisis that has priced out our teachers, firefighters, police, our children, our senior citizens on fixed incomes cannot afford to live here. We don't have a lot of transit service, and a huge chunk of our community, including the parents of immigrants who visit here, do not know how to drive, and they cannot get around our community, right? We also don't have a community center. This is something that Josh and I share, is that we need a community center for our teens and our seniors. And then finally, we need more businesses here so that we don't have to drive off the plateau to get everything. These are all problems that we can solve if we have the courage to solve them and not shy away from them and pretend these problems don't exist. I want to raise these issues and I want to solve them so that Sammamish is more sustainable, livable, and convenient for everyone. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Boyer. Thanks to the Chamber for putting this on. It was great to see everybody. I've probably called Sammamish my home for 30 years. My wife and I raised our 2 sons here. But now affordability and quality of life is really a challenge for everybody. We're in a difficult position, I think. I'm running to ensure that all residents, regardless of stage of life, can thrive. My career has been one of problem solving, leadership, and improving wherever I am. Sammamish is facing environmental, fiscal, and a lot of problems that you well know. I'm going to bring my education and my over 4 decades of work experience to bear to try and solve some of these problems. I will pursue prosperity, preservation, and public good in every action. So as for prosperity, I don't think we can tax our way to prosperity or build our way to solvency. For preservation, we have to preserve what we have, and for public good, all decisions must be for public good. So I'm running as a public servant, and I look forward to talking to many of you afterwards.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Howe, and I'm running for my position 7, and I've been delighted to serve as your council member and as your mayor. It has been an absolute privilege. Together, we have improved roads, we have upgraded ball fields, we have added new sidewalks, we have added trails, we've added open space. We've done a lot of work in just 3 years, and I'm extremely proud of our climate action plan, our sustainability plan, transportation and transit master plans, and the housing diversification plan. I'm running for re-election to continue the progress that we've made together in such a short time. My vision for Sammamish is to remain safe and beautiful and welcoming and a place for everyone. I'm committed to fiscal sustainability for the long term, for keeping Sammamish livable with efficient connections to jobs, schools, open, slices of nature, and to continue working on our work plan to finish that up with the service to the city.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, I'm Debbie Treen, and I'm running for position 7 on the Sammamish City Council. My campaign is a nonpartisan grassroots effort built around 5 major issues: government transparency, responsible growth, environmental protection, fiscal accountability, and most of all, community involvement. My opinions and decisions around local issues are not influenced by any partisan platforms. I rely upon my professional experience as a retired chief financial officer, most recently with Cornish College, and my local community activism around growth management, land use, and the environment, and my leadership on the Bothell City Council as their mayor when we lived in Bothell. I chose to run for the Sammamish City Council because I disagree with the direction the City Council is leading us in the town center with 4,000 units. We need professional leadership to explore all our options in a comprehensive way, not just focus on the town center and one developer. It's time for change.
Thank you. Appreciate you getting a chance to have your intros there, and now we'll jump into some questions that are set up by the board here. The first topic is be in Sammamish, School pickup and drop-off times are a major cause of congestion and traffic. I think we can all agree on that. So there's a two-part question. The first question is, what do you propose should be done to steadily and incrementally reduce congestion during pickup and drop-off times for schools? The second part of the question is, have you personally experienced regular traffic congestion other than school times? And if so, where and what projects do you feel are warranted? And we'll also pass out questions in case you don't remember them as we go through the system there. And the beginning, we'll start off the question and answer. Again, you'll get 2 minutes per section. Please watch the time and stay within your period. We'll start with Debbie Treen as the first one.
Thank you. School pickup and drop-off. I don't even go to the plateau during school pickup and drop-off. It is impossible to get through there. It's a difficult one to solve. I know for the last 5 years we've been talking about meeting with the school districts and helping with changing their dismissal times and coordinating with them. I think the best solution is really to provide a better route through the parking lots so that they can get off the main road quickly and be able to wait for their students. That's going to take some work with the districts. I'm not sure how easy or difficult that will be, but I don't see anything that the city can do in terms of roads other than to cooperate with the school districts if there's a need to add some connections or roads beside the schools. Some of them have side roads they could take advantage of. Have I personally experienced regular traffic congestion other than the school district or the school related? Definitely. It is typically when I was commuting to work, which I'm retired now, but I only retired in December, so it hasn't been that long. If you have to go up to the plateau in the morning, you don't want to go after 7:30. At 8 o'clock, people start coming to school, so I guess it is school related in a sense. But the reality is it's not just dismissal, it's the morning as well. And it's the school buses driving on all of our main arterials picking up students. Those are all issues that they're still relevant when it comes to how do we solve the problem, because we've got to do something to manage school buses where there's a lane where you could pull out and then the traffic could get by. We see it on East Lake Sammamish Parkway as well. Perhaps having the school buses pull off into other areas, find areas where they could pull off to allow people to pass if they're going to be delayed more than 5, just like we do on the old rural roads where we had to, if you're delaying 5, you've got to pull over.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll pass it over to Sid Gupta, and after Sid, you'll be passing it over to Karen.
Can everyone hear me? Yes, okay, great. Yes, I think school pickup and drop off, everyone agrees this is when our traffic is the worst in Sammamish. This is why we are doing a bike and pedestrian mobility plan this year, right? We want to give our kids more options, but we can't just say, hey, get out of your car, don't get dropped off. We have to make it safe and practical. We can't just push people under our roads because we know we need more crosswalks. We know people have to wait a long time at the lights for them to cycle. So we're identifying gaps. We're actually looking at it this Tuesday at council. And we're going to prioritize projects and then figure out how to fund them. The Climate Commitment Act from the state was specifically amended so that those dollars can be used for non-motorized projects. I think there are opportunities for those kinds of projects. In the second part, personally experiencing regular traffic congestion. So it's school pickup and drop off. It's also commuter traffic. And the way that we solve both of these is also transit. We've seen such amazing success in our city from the under 18 free youth passes. I took the bus here tonight. There were so many kids getting off from school, getting on that bus. It makes it so easy. We also adopted a transit plan in 2023 because we know as great as transit service is in theory, it is not great on the plateau. We are down to one bus route, which is going to improve when light rail comes across the water to Seattle, spring 26. We're going to get nights, weekends, and 15-minute headways at peak times. That's going to be great. But we also know that our existing transit only serves 1 out of 7 households, right? Everyone else lives too far away for that to be a feasible option. So we're looking at neighborhood circulator shuttles run by the city to get you from where you live to the main spine. We're looking at a shuttle that goes directly from the northwest corner of town center down to Marymore Light Rail Station. Regardless of the housing choices that we make, we know we have traffic congestion now, so we need to be looking at mass transit as a solution however we grow.
Thank you. Karen?
Thank you. So I think we all look forward to summer because the traffic is so much better. So I think everyone is quite aware of just how tough it is during bell times. So there's several little things that are happening all at the same time. It is parents dropping off kids to school. It'd be great if we could find a way to do more of the walking school bus like I just did last week with McCullough, where the kids were so excited about walking with their parents to school. I realize not everybody can do that, but many can. And for those that can, it'd be great if they could, because heaven knows they don't get that much time at recess. So just that social interaction that they get together is outstanding. The other thing that would be really cool if we could work on this is actually have the youth help us with this problem from the standpoint, there's a ton of kids that drive to school, drive themselves to school, to high school. Could they work on a solution together that is more equitable and allowing more kids to get to school? If they ride share, if they could maybe not everybody drive to school on the same day, anything. But I also find that if you give them a problem, they will come up with a solution you never would have thought of, and it'll work for them because they came up with it. So those are the types of things, in addition, of course, to working with the school districts to encourage them to explore Metro as another source instead of just school buses. We know they have trouble finding bus drivers. So I think the fact that, Sid Gupta mentioned about how popular Metro is for the kids, they all have that Orca card, and they love that Orca card. And I want them to teach their parents how to use an Orca card, because I sit on the regional transit committee, and I would say that there's a ton of people that haven't used one, don't know what it is, and are a little concerned about how it might work. So just getting over that comfort level of doing that yourself, great excursion, highly recommend. So in terms of, have I personally experienced traffic congestion? You betcha. But I'm also kind of used to it because I commute to work. And so that's just been sort of a normal thing. So in order to make it...
Thank you, Karen, and we'll need to move on here, I think.
on a roll.
You're on a roll. Okay, Amy Lamb, you'll be up next, and then you'll hand it over to Gisha.
So definitely school pickup and drop off is an issue. In my experience, I had my kids bike to school. They were close enough, and they biked to Pine Lake. When they got a little bit older, they rode the bus to Skyline. I do think it's really important that when kids are able to, that they do take the bus. I think there's a lot of parents who don't allow their kids to walk or ride their bikes because it's a safety issue for the parent, and that's why I think sidewalks are really important. I advocated that we fund additionally for sidewalks this year, and with council support, I increased the sidewalk fund budget from $1.2 million to 2.4, so I doubled it. And that is just one step to filling in those sidewalks. We do prioritize sidewalks in areas that are around schools. And secondly, for bikes, it's the same thing. It's funding for sidewalks and additionally for bike paths as well. We do have a bike and pedestrian plan that we're going to be reviewing actually on Tuesday. And I do think transit is also going to be, our transit plan will also be part of this as well, simply because a lot of high schoolers do ride Metro, and it would be great to get some sort of coordination so that the kids can take Metro and get to their school, on time. So I do look forward to continually working on our bike and pedestrian plan and our overall mobility plan, which is will be a multimodal plan in the future.
Hi, everyone. So part one speaks to me at a very visceral level. I live off Southeast 8th, which is just behind Skyline. And if I try to get out of my neighborhood onto Southeast 8th at any time between 7:30 to 8, I am waiting for at least 5 minutes for as high schoolers zip by, right? There is no gap. I'm just waiting and waiting because I cannot turn. And it's usually one kid in a car, right? And we have like 50 cars walking by. And the other point, I think, where school-related congestion we see is when our left turn lanes back up and into 228, so it blocks the left lane completely. So 228 becomes a single lane at that point, and backing up traffic again. And this is during school pickup and drop-off. I think we have to look at it in a multi-pronged way. One is, how do we manage our traffic better so the left turn lanes are not blocked and we are not kind of causing congestion on 228? And the second, I think, is how do we incentivize our high schoolers to carpool? Like, how do we get them to multiple kids in one car, or how do we get them to use the school bus? What is stopping them? I think that's what we need to understand. Why are they all driving to school and then driving back? Why are they not taking the bus? Why are they not walking? Why are they not biking? Can we incentivize them? Can we give, I don't know what, free movie tickets? I don't know, what do teenagers like these days? I'll have to ask my son. But incentivize them to not take their cars, right? And incentivize parents to not drop them off, right? Why are parents not letting kids go on the bus or bike or walk, like Amy says? To the second point, have I experienced congestion out of school times? Absolutely. I think there is a temple on 228, and every time there is an event over there, traffic backs up. It happens many times. It's not a one-off thing. During commute times, around 6 o'clock, you come back, lanes are backed up. I'm thinking carpooling, van pooling. King County has an excellent program. I think those programs need to be publicized, and residents need to utilize those programs, I think,
All right,
to
thank
solve the
you.
condition.
And Michael, you'll be next, and you'll hand it off to Josh.
Okay, school pickup and drop off. I think many of us have experienced that. So this one hits close to home. As an industrial engineer, I was asked to solve these problems in industry all the time. It was frustrating because I would get there and think, wow, who designed this? The lanes are screwy, the way you go, people get blocked, there's no throughput, someone will jug up the system. So I think there's a way to solve that. I think the intent is to get them in and out quickly. I think we all avoid those times also. We all look at the clock and think, okay, I'm not going to go to the store now because I'll never get out. I'm not going to go to QFC at 3 p.m. because I'll never get through. So I think one of the things we can do is start to level load the traffic, manage signals, look at lanes, and talk about looking at where these cars are, what they're doing. And a lot of cities will do real-time traffic management. They'll know where the load is, and they'll manage signals accordingly. I would also look at the whole system. You just can't look at something in isolation. So have I personally experienced some of these problems? Yes, getting here was one of those times. I probably have a different view in mass transit. I think if we don't have a dedicated lane for buses, it'll just make things worse. You'll just get more trouble. Shuttles, same thing. So I don't think the answer is trying to put more buses on a road, because a bus will take out 80 people driving, but we have much more than that. I think we're going to have to maximize what we have, do the best with the current situation, and manage the traffic, because I don't think human nature, people are going to get out of their cars. We're a bedroom community, people drive their cars. We can do all we can to adjust that behavior, but I think it's us to manage what we have.
Thank you. Josh.
Okay, what do I think can be done to steadily and incrementally reduce congestion around school pickup and drop-off times? I think we need to increase some turn lane lengths going into schools to get some of those cars out of the main road lanes of traffic. I think that'll help. But I'm really more concerned about the emergency response after something happens and there's panic on the plateau and people are all trying to get their kids out of school at one time. And that's something we need to really have a plan for. There's only so much we can do about school bell schedules. I think we all know that. There's going to be congestion. We can do small improvements like increasing turn length to make throughput better and make stress go down a little bit. The other part of the question was, where have I personally experienced traffic? I live near Beaver Lake Middle School. My office is in downtown Redmond. I commute to downtown Redmond 3 different ways, typically, well, 2. I go down to 202, so I go all the way through Sahalee, and then I also go down Inglewood Hill Road to East Lake Sammamish Parkway. So I experience traffic mainly around on the way home at the Timberline neighborhood, and then at Pine Lake Park by Southeast 24th. That's another area where the turn lane could be expanded to get more people off of the main road so they can turn left in that location. But another element of this question is the safety aspect. Turning left on 228th or Sahalee Way is very challenging and very dangerous for people. We need to improve safety for vehicles, but also pedestrians in those areas, and same with speeding around our elementary schools through implementing speed cameras or speed bumps, because that's another issue where there's a real safety concern. So congestion, yes, is a challenge, but improving safety, especially around our schools, is a priority of mine as well.
Galen? Yep.
First, I want to respond to Michael, which is I'll get on a bus for you and free up a car for you. But what I want to say is, if you don't want to take a bus, that's perfectly fine. Other people will have the choice to take transit, and that will still take cars off the road, right? And I actually see it. In fact, my daughter is one of them. She's one of the ones who suggested to me, I'm going to bike to McAuliffe or I'm going to take the bus because I don't want to pollute the earth. At 6 years old, that's what she's saying. And then when I'm trying to get my teen volunteers to out canvas for me, sometimes they can't come because they don't have a bus to take them to the neighborhood because they don't drive, surprisingly. A lot of our teens do not drive today. So I think what we need to do is actually offer our people the choice of taking transit, right? Whether that's a bus that goes down 228th every 10 to 15 minutes, or shuttles that go through our neighborhoods and take people to the light rail. If we design our city with transit in mind, those who take the bus and want to take transit will, and those they don't will have half as many cars on the road to deal with, right? The key thing is to offer people that choice. And so I'm a huge advocate of transit. I think it's something that we should fund and we should advocate for with Metro. I think building the town center and having density will help because Metro will give us more transit service if we have density to prove it, right? So that's one aspect. Now, on the second question of have I personally experienced traffic congestion, the answer is yes, as with everyone here. I would actually prioritize road improvements to Sahalee Way, right? I think Sahalee is a country road that's quite outdated. What we need is a turn lane on Sahalee for people to be able to pull over, make a left turn so it doesn't block the roads, because usually that's when congestion starts. I agree with signal optimization. That light at Timberline is the bane of my existence. Sometimes it turns red with no reason, no traffic whatsoever, so I think we need to optimize. And then I would love to have more crosswalks, bike lanes, and better transit stops there so that we can accommodate buses on that road, and that congestion will have relieved that traffic going to Redmond and Microsoft.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone who's stayed under their 2 minutes, and we'll keep working on that. So the next question is really about the environment in Sammamish, things like tree retention, tree canopy, urban forests, parks, open space. We can all agree we have a beautiful city. Stormwater, wetlands, wildlife, lakes and streams, aquifer, recharge areas, slopes, all these different factors are affected by our ordinances. And the city staff have mentioned and their consultants that we have some of the strongest environmental protections compared to many other cities in the region. So now to the question. Do you believe that the current critical area or environmental protections in Sammamish are acceptable? Are there environmental topics you feel need to be strengthened or relaxed? And put in a simple way, are there changes you'd like to see for environmental protections? And if so, why? Okay, just to kind of change the order up so the audience knows, we did randomize the list so people would be in different orders. We're going to start in this time with Josh, and then we'll go to Lynn next.
I can sense Paul Stickney in this question. I served on the Planning Commission as we were updating the Urban Forest Management Plan and finally adopted that, and then started work on the Environmental Sustainability Plan before my term expired. As far as our environmental areas that need to be strengthened, I think mainly, this is a tough one for me to answer because I hear a lot of rumblings, but I have not directly experienced the impact people have with dealing with our city code, our public works, and community development and application of our code. My understanding, and I might be incorrect, there's a couple council members who are probably going to be able to correct me on this one, is that it might not be implemented equally as different people are reviewing the code and making determinations for residents who are making updates, whether that's related to their stormwater impacts that they're going to have, or their sewer or septic systems, versus a larger scale developer and what they're going to be putting in place. So in all honesty, I'm going to have to do a really thorough review of this and rely on experts to give me some solid advice. I am more of an expert on the budget element and on that than I am on the environmental aspect of it. So yeah, that's, do I get points for being under time?
You do. Thank you, Josh. Yeah. That's good. All right, Lynn.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. You know, I think environmental protection is something that we love about our community, and where it makes sense, we need to have strong environmental protections. But I actually have heard and have personal experience with code being in conflict with each other. I was potentially looking at what the code is for the critical swamp in the backyard of my house, and I was just consulting the city community development, someone who worked there, and he gave me conflicting advice of whether I could expand my house, whether I couldn't expand my house, because different codes said different things, right? And I was thinking, if somebody actually was more serious in building something, that would probably frustrate them. And in fact, that somebody was my high school classmate who is trying to build a house next to his aging mom in a lot that's split. And he has been stuck in 6 years waiting for approval. And there are many, many codes that have basically designated his lot in a critical area. After spending $6,000 to get the review, they denied him the permit because they all of a sudden found in a code that he was in a critical area, right? And so I do think that we have to make our code more clear, our regulations more clear, so that we make it easier for residents to go through these reviews and cheaper to get through these reviews, so that they're, you know, they know what to expect. The second aspect I want to talk about is actually, I think there's a generational difference between environmental protection in terms of protecting trees, water, you know, open space, and climate change, and action that we have to take on climate change. I believe that transit-oriented development, reducing our emissions, should be part of our environmental regulations, and that we actually need to be more aggressive in trying to reduce our emissions in terms of how many people drive, as well as how many people are using natural gas versus electricity at home to heat their homes. And so and when I talk about aggressive, I'm saying we should let people know what the incentives are and encourage people to actually switch to cleaner energy sources, because that is now also a critical part of environmental protection.
Thank you, Lynn. We'll move on to Karen, and Karen, you'll hand it over to Amy after you're done.
Okay. So we do have the most stringent stormwater standards in the state. And it does create issues and problems for anyone that's trying to develop, because they are stringent. So whether you're a big developer like STCA at Town Center and have to put in a 500 million gallon storm vault for 100-year storms, or whether you're the small homeowner that's in Inglewood that's just trying to do a little tiny extension to their home, it makes it tougher, and it makes it more expensive. So there's definitely trade-offs that I think that people need to understand, that yes, we can put in much stricter ordinances, and we do review them on a regular and continual basis. It does have an impact. And so understanding what that balance is between getting what we want, what is our intent, and truly protecting the environment. In terms of things that I would like to see updated, is I'd like to see what we can start to do, in particular with development and trees, for protecting the root system of the trees that are retained. My concern is that we need to extend out the protection area around the root system of the trees that are staying in such a way that tractors and so forth don't drive over the roots. Because too often what happens is the roots are damaged, trees look fine, but 5 years later they're dead. And so that is something that I think that we could do a better job of and enforce, so that the trees that are there are maintained and healthy. The other thing that I would love to see us work on is whatever we can do to keep pollutants off of the roadway that ends up into our streams. And that has to do with even just the rubber from the tires that we drive, for the cars that we drive today, that end up in the streams that do affect things like the kokanee salmon.
Thank you.
So I think we need to look at our tree codes. That is something that we'll be looking at next year. There's this balance between people that want to take down trees and keeping our trees. And so it's growing the right trees, the native plants, and if you do take out trees, like how many are you allowed, how many should you replant? I know that's a balance that has to be structured in a way that works for everybody. Town center is going to be a huge part of how the city grows, and so in terms of protection, we need to take a look at it very carefully on the environmental protections and how town center grows. And some of the things that we have added to our town center plan that we'll be working on is something called Eco Factor, which is similar to Seattle Green Factor, and it's supposed to improve the environment. It's supposed to improve the environment and the landscape, so you're awarded points based on what you plant and how you plant, and if you have like a green roof. And so those are the ways that the town center developer is going to have to abide by to make sure that we're being as green as possible. I think other ways is that a lot of the building can be LEED certified, which is one of the most stringent environmental and building codes that we can have on our buildings. We know that concentrated in development in town center reduces the environmental impact with less impervious surface and removal of trees. So I do think that town center will play a very important part in how we continue to be sustainable in our city.
Thank you. We'll move on to Michael, and then Debbie will be after Michael.
Okay, my understanding of the current environmental codes that we have now, I agree with Karen. I think there's some of the most stringent that are out there, so that's good. So good for our city. I would say, though, that there are concerns. I got a letter today from, it must be the city, where there's going to be a hearing where we are going to look at a parcel. And I know many of you probably live in these areas. We lived in kind of by Skyline for a while where there was vintage. Now we're by Pine Lake. And I know what was there before. Builders went in, clear-cut everything, and then built from there. I think that's probably pretty common. So that is concerning. I would say that that would be one thing that I would want to look at, because now we're cutting down our carbon sinks, and if you're concerned about global warming, look at what we're doing. I would say the same is true for town center. I look at the amount of concrete that is at the library and the YMCA, and I think, wow, how is that going to drain? It all perked before. You look at the trees that are gone now and what's going to happen. So I have concerns. Now, I don't see that as an expert because I don't know the new code coming up very well, but I hope we look at that very carefully. I am one to think about preservation of what we have. When we change the character of the city by removing the canopy that we all enjoy, it really changes things. And then I think about what goes downhill from where we are on top and down the streams. It's just as unimaginable that nothing bad could happen. It used to perk through the soil to our watershed, and now we have to go through vaults. As an engineer, I'm not exactly convinced that that works very well. So I think there are a lot of things to do. I think we should protect what we have and keep and preserve our city as we know it. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
And get points
All
for
right,
that.
Debbie, go ahead.
That's all right. Thanks. I'll take your extra time, but this is one of my favorite topics. When we first moved to Sammamish, one of the first things we did, and it was the first partnership with the city and Sammamish stewards, was to restore a damaged wetland on our yard. We have since removed invasive species and replanted with natives. It's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. The reality is it is way cheaper to preserve our valuable environment than it is to go back 20 years later and try to recreate it. We're already paying the price for the terrible culverts that we used building roads that blocked fish passage, and now we're spending millions of dollars to recreate fish passages for our salmon to spawn. I am absolutely committed to the urban forest management plan. I wish it was already revisited before we started rezoning things and giving away or redeveloping code, because I think it's important that we deal with our trees first. The stringent stormwater rules, yes, I've been told they're the most stringent in the state, but I can tell you I have on my desk at home 5 variances that have been granted this year to the new code. It was just adopted, and we're already having to grant variances. So how tough is it if we don't enforce it? I agree with the statement about expanding our tree retention protection, because Carnation calls their tree areas the native growth protection easement, and they have real fences around it while they're constructing, not just the little orange screen that gets bulldozed over. So I would love to work with somebody on that. And I'll stop there since I'm losing time too. It's just the code enforcement, I think, is really the key. I have other examples where we have just granted variances on things that we thought would be protected.
Thank you. Now we're moving to Sid, and you'll go to Jish after that.
Yes, there are obviously more things that we could do. One thing in particular that I've advocated for since being elected is a canopy cover goal to go with our upcoming updated tree canopy assessment. So when we put together our urban forest management plan in 2016, the city did a survey of the city. They flew a plane over in partnership with UW. They did LiDAR. They saw what percentage of the city is covered in tree canopy. So we have that data. We didn't really do anything with it. We're getting new data from 23. I want to establish a goal, just like Issaquah has, just like Redmond has, so we can hold ourselves accountable as we make decisions. We know what our percentage should be, so we can say, okay, this area is going to be developed, but we know we're going to mitigate for that by taking these actions. So that, I think, is incredibly important. I will continue to advocate for that very, very strongly. We had a great kokanee salmon run. I'm very proud to be part of the kokanee work group this year. That speaks to the work that we've been doing in partnership with all of our local agencies. I want to make sure we continue to protect our water. We have very strict stormwater standards. So I think what we should do and what we are doing as a city is retrofitting old facilities that were developed under the old rules that are not as strict, because the new rules require the flow and volume to be equivalent to natural forested state. And I was very proud as a steward to work on the native planting restoration project by Big Rock Park North at Lancaster Ridge. We wilded an existing stormwater pond. We retrofitted it, and that area is beautiful now. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend you go take a look. It's right by Big Rock Park North. We just updated our critical areas ordinance. We made it stronger so that we make sure that our wetlands have the appropriate buffers as things are developed. We make sure that those areas cannot be built in no matter what happens. We adopted a climate action plan. That was one of the first votes that I was able to take. We have a sustainability commission. I see some commissioners in the audience. Thank you so much for coming. And we know that we need to add more to that. We need a water section so that we can look at how much water we're using in our parks and what are the steps we can take to use less. What are our residents doing? How can we encourage them to use less? I'll stop there. Thank you.
Do I think we are doing enough? No, I don't. So when I was talking to a few residents. They said one of their main concern is if they want to cut down a tree in their backyard, they have to get a permit from the city. They have to plant more trees. They're very strict about how big the tree is, how wide it is. So many conditions. But then we see developers just buying a huge swath of land, and 2 days later, all the trees are gone. We hold our residents and developers to different standards. I do not know why. We definitely need to hold them to the same standards. Why is it not okay for a resident to cut one tree while a developer can go in, buy a huge swath of land and cut down hundreds of trees? And that's perfectly fine. We have no problem with that. That needs to change. We need to hold developers to the same standards. There was a story from a neighbor on Facebook where he said, when a developer wants to build a large plot of land, there's an environmental impact to wildlife. Like what kind of animals are using that place as their habitat? And he said the guy who's supposed to do the assessment came and sat in his truck at 12 noon and then submitted an assessment that said there are 2 squirrels and 1 sparrow or something like that's being impacted. And this neighbor provided his trail cam taken in the night where there were bears, coyotes, bobcats, right? And then they had to go back. But why are we allowing that? Why are we allowing developers to do the assessment and for them to say, oh, we just saw 2 sparrows and then call it a day and then the whole trees, the environment is gone? Our environment is not just trees. Our environment is the water, the wildlife that calls this place home. And there should be a place for that. I come from Illinois. Believe me, people in Chicago pay a lot of money to vacation in a place like Sammamish. Our lakes, our hills, our greenery, we should never take it for granted. Once we lose it, like Debbie said, it's very difficult to get it back. So yes, it needs to be strengthened for sure.
Thank you. All right, we will go to the next question here. Appreciate everyone paying attention to time and trying to keep us on track. We have a lot of questions and a lot of candidates, so we appreciate that. The biennial budget for Sammamish has been facing issues for several years, including down revenues, local taxes that have been going up on residents, changes in spending, drawdown on reserves, money for capital projects has been declining. In 2023, the city identified a $17 million per year operating fiscal imbalance. The city recently adopted a utility tax of 6%, which is forecast to generate $11 million a year in revenue, and they're also evaluating a metropolitan park tax that could generate up to $5 million. And these type of taxes fall on the residents. So the question, what are the main specific methods you propose to significantly change spending or increase revenue to yield substantial biennial operating budgets and increase our capital funding? And we will start with, that's my signal there. Amy, you're going to jump in and start, and you'll hand over to Michael.
Thank you. So I think it's really important that we diversify our revenues. Currently, we rely on 60% property tax and 40% sales tax and other things. And when you take a look at what's happening in Issaquah, for example, they're the exact inverse. They are only 40% reliant on property taxes. So it's important to diversify so we're less reliant on property taxes for our city's revenue. And I think town center is going to be a huge part of that. It won't solve all our problems, but that is definitely one way. We also need to consider bonds. We, as a city, has never offered bonds before for major capital expenditures. We rely on traffic impact fees to fund those capital projects. And so when we get those dollars, we spend it, within 6 years. But I do think that having capital bonds allow for current residents and, most importantly, future residents to pay for those capital projects. I think that the city needs to do more work in getting grants. There was that huge infrastructure, I guess, bill that was part of the last administration, and we got very little. I don't even think we got any, simply because we don't go after federal grants, and we need to. We need to go after the big dollars, and we need a grant writer, and that's something that our council has been asking for consistently. Having a grant writer would allow us to do that, and it would end up paying for itself.
Michael?
I think financial health is probably the top of my list and why I'm running. I do believe that a city that's broke can't survive. I think that's got to be at the top. We don't think about that much because we assume cities have money and we're fine. And then we talk about all the other things we're going to do with all this money. But I think many of you know that the city's finances I would say are on the edge. We're out of it now because of the utility tax, but we know that coming up, if we don't have the Parks District, we're going to be in that same situation. I think that gaining more revenue is tough. We're not a city that can have a Microsoft or an Amazon or Costco in our backyard. So now we're relegated to property taxes, and we can do little things here and there, but you're going to just chase away businesses if you increase sales tax. You're going to chase away residents if you increase property tax. So that leads me to think about spending. I think we have to live within our means. I would suggest us going through the budget program by program, and some things might not survive, and that's the hard truth. For operating expenses, we have to just sharpen our pencil on those numbers. For capital, I agree with Amy. It could be a bond that's necessary because now the citizens have the ability to vote for capital. If they choose not to, well, then we know where we stand, and they live in the city that they voted for. I do think, though, that chasing down a lot of revenue is difficult. We really need to look at all the expenses and how we can run an efficient city.
Thank you. And we'll move to Jisha, and then you'll hand it over to Sid.
To me, I think managing our budget is simple. We spend less than we make. I think it applies to the city, it applies to our homes. I think as a city, what we should do is prioritize services that benefit residents first. So if we are spending money, it should make sense for our residents. We should be paying our employees first, obviously. We should pay for services that make lives better for our residents in terms of why are we prioritizing spending tens of millions to put bike lanes on Sahali and then saying we can't afford a lifeguard at Pine Lake? Where does that make sense for us? How are we saying that, hey, we take millions of dollars from parks, but then we are going to and give it to the developer, to the town center, and then say we're not going to plow all our roads? What happens if you don't plow a road and somebody there has an emergency, medical emergency? How is an ambulance going to get that person? We need to put our residents first, period. We need to figure out what services give our residents the maximum ROI, return on investment. We also need to look at what are our alternate sources of funding. Can we get federal and state grants to pay for some of the infrastructure? We don't need to pay all of it through our taxes. We can leverage some of those grants that are available to us. We need to make sure that, Amy's right, we don't get enough sales tax. How can we increase sales tax? Incentivize people to ship all their purchases. Don't go to Target in Issaquah, order in to your home. Right? If the shipping address is Sammamish gets the sales tax. Right? So we need to look at creative ways as well. We need to figure out what makes sense for our residents. Do we electrify our entire fleet or do we use biofuel? Right? Those are the choices we need to make. We cannot tax our way to a better budget for sure.
I want to be very clear. This is a structural imbalance in our budget. This is a problem every city is facing. And we did this work when we considered our utility tax. There's a very helpful presentation that was given to council. You can find it on our website for the council retreat. It breaks down services that the city is required by law to provide, services where we have the ability to adjust level of service, and things that are nice to have. But really, when you think of this, what services the city provides, those are probably the ones that you care about. So if we didn't have a utility tax, we would have to cut to bridge this gap because of the scale, $11 million in operational spending. We would have to cut parks and open space acquisition and development, recreation, all of our community events, human services funding, sustainability initiatives, communications, passport services, lifeguards, public art funding, city commissions, streetlight operation. All of that is cut. That is not reduced, that is cut. In addition, we would have to reduce street maintenance, that's snow and ice removal, vegetation management, litter patrol, pavement preservation, inspection services, code enforcement and permit processing times, parks maintenance, parks restrooms, and administration, right? That is all stuff that we would have to reduce to bridge this structural imbalance. Our police costs went up 8% in the last budget. Our fire costs went up 15%. Together, those make up over half of our operational budget. I say operational budget because that is different. Operational spending is different from capital spending. So Sahali Way, when we build that, that comes from capital dollars. That doesn't come from operational spending. We could choose to draw from our general fund to spend that, but our shortfall is in operational spending. And if we choose to cut as our main revenue solution, we are projecting fire and police to continue going up. Public safety is hugely important. I'm sure we want to keep funding that. So in the next biennium, we're going to have to cut services again. We're gonna have to cut everything in those two tables I just read to you. We're gonna have to go through this process again. Our general fund spend per capita in Sammamish is $859. The next closest in our region, Mercer Island at $1384, Issaquah is at $1679. We run a very lean ship in Sammamish. So when you cut, you're cutting services, and we need to be very clear about that.
Thank you. We're going to switch to Lynn, and then after that, you'll have Josh.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I want to present a dichotomy. On multiple surveys, we were rated as the wealthiest small city in America. And from a budget perspective, we're the poorest city in the Puget Sound region. Why does that dichotomy exist, right? Let's think about that, right? Look at our community. It's filled with homes, and there are no businesses, right? This city is funded on the back of property owners. And through many doors that I knock, people realize that, and they know that they do not want to see their property taxes continue to go up to fund their city services. But we have no other place to raise revenue because we have not built out a city that has diversified revenue sources. This has been done before, right? Every other city in our region has more money than us because they know what they need to bring in more revenue, right? And they need a robust downtown area with a mixture of housing and businesses that are thriving, right? That's what creates revenue for our city. So I'm not the kind of person who wants to continue to raise property taxes. I would love to have the flexibility to not have to raise property taxes if we have really other revenue sources, right? But I think that dichotomy that we're one of the poorest cities from a city budget perspective needs to be fixed. Because as the wealthiest small city of America, our citizens expect more from our government. We want other services. We want things like a community center, right? That has services for our teens and our senior citizens, right? We actually do want fire and police services at a high level, right? A few years ago, I had a fire 2 doors from me, and if the firefighters didn't arrive within 7 minutes, it was in the middle of summer, that fire would have spread to my house, and I had to evacuate with my then 3-year-old and 1-year-old in the middle of the night, right? Freezing out in the cold, hoping that the 5 fire engines that came, that was, basically surged into my neighborhood would stop that fire from spreading. I am so glad that we fully fund our services, and I want that to continue. And at the end of the day, we cannot continue to survive as a bedroom community with 67,000 people in our community. That is fiscally, quite frankly, unsustainable, right? We have the needs of a large city. We're the 4th largest city on the east side, and we need to have a budget that reflects that. So I actually am advocating for more revenue, diversified revenue, commercial and retail development, right? So that we can strengthen our budget and pay for everything to safeguard our city. Thank you.
Josh?
All right, thank you very much for this question. The budget's the most critical element that the city council passes because it's what funds all the priorities and the things that we want to do. I think first we need to clarify that comparison to other cities within our region is not a good comparison. We're not the same. We don't have freeways, we don't have employment centers, Microsoft isn't here, we don't have a Costco. There's a Costco in Kirkland, Issaquah, Redmond. We don't have that. We're not gonna have a bunch of sales tax coming into our region or into our city. The other element I wanna touch on is the town center. I was reading from a public records request, the financial impact of the town center. The difference between going to 4,000 dwelling units and 2,000 dwelling units in our city budget is only $2 million. Only $2 million extra dollars are going to come into our city by upzoning the town center to 4,000 units. This diversification is not an answer to our tax issue. We have to live within our means. That means we're going to have to prioritize spending and have a very transparent budget process and involve the residents more in the decision-making process. And I say that because we're either going to have to raise taxes to fund those services, or we're going to have to cut those services in order to meet our budget. And I think if we're going to ask residents to pay more in taxes, I don't love taxes, but I think they're the price we have to pay to live in a great community. But if we're gonna ask residents to pay more in taxes, we're gonna have to be very clear about what those taxes are going to fund. And so I think we need to have a very, very transparent process. We need to have a city council that has a budget committee. We need to have a resident advisory committee on the budget to review those, and if necessary, go to the public and make sure they understand the give and take on paying more taxes or cutting services. I always hear that residents want great services, but they're never asked, now are you willing to pay X amount more in taxes for it? That's a very important question to ask. And they might be willing to pay. We need to ask that question. And on the bonds question, on the capital question, I'm running out of time, but I do support the city taking out bonds to pay for road projects. It is cheaper to borrow money now than to pay more in cost of labor later and cost of materials. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Karen and then close out with Debbie.
Thank you. Well, when suburbs are created, you're making a promise to residents that we will always be there for you, that you'll always have a road, that you'll have sewer, that you'll have power, that you have utilities. The problem is, of course, suburbs are further away from urban centers, and so it is more expensive to provide these services. And as was stated before, every city, every town is in a structural imbalance right now. So how to get out of it? Well, the first thing we did was we cut $8.9 million out of the budget. That's the first thing you do, is you do cut. And then you continue to revisit your budget and you look at it continually to see where there's opportunity for savings. That's just good business, right? That's just sensible. But also, if you're running a good business, you cannot cut yourself to death, because then there's nothing left. So it's been stated, we need to be here for residents. Well, the residents completed a statistically valid survey that said that they care about services a lot, that it's extremely important to them. Well, if that's the case, then we still need to provide that. But I do think that what we can do, in addition to continuing to revisit the budget and see where we can trim, we need to be smart about where we make investments. The thing about bonds is you have to have a way to repay them. You can't do a bond without the repayment structure. Now, if you did something called a regional fire authority, that becomes a regional taxing authority. And now you know what you're buying. You're buying access to your fire services. So that is an example of how we could structure something that could pull that expense out of the budget, put it someplace else, and let residents decide what level they want to fund it to. So there's an advantage there, is that people know what they're buying. The disadvantage is it will probably cost you more than what you're paying today.
Debbie?
Hi. Yes, I agree. Most municipalities are now dealing with the structural imbalance. And I think the ironic thing is even the ones with huge amounts of retail and commercial development are struggling with a structural imbalance. So it's not just our residential city that we live in. I want to talk about the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force that was set up a few years ago for us to look at this very issue. And actually, Michael and I both served on that along with about 10 other residents from the community. We did not evaluate expenses or include the potential impacts of the town center by design of the consultant. We did evaluate a whole bunch of different potential sources of revenue, and we recommended the utility tax as well as the Metropolitan Park District as the two best sources for Sammamish. But we also asked that the city first reduces expenses by $1 million, and we gave that over 3 years to achieve that. And I'm just going to cite a couple of numbers from the budget. When I look at page 102 of our 25-26 budget, I see an increase in expenses from $103 million in 21-22 to $115 million in 23-24, and now $128 million in 2025-26. So I don't see where $8 million in expenses have been cut. It was the task force expectation that expenses then, that level, would be reduced. That did not happen. Today, I don't think we can have a sustainable budget without significant analysis of both existing expenses and revenue and the impact of the town center on our budget. I would love to reinstitute the fiscal sustainability task force to take on that project.
All right, thank you, and congratulations. We're halfway through. You guys are doing great. All right, we're going to move on to some other topics. Let's talk a little bit about the 20-year comprehensive plan. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with it. It was just adopted in 2024 with a 2,100 unit growth target. The housing affordability income levels for that were established around the King County Affordable Housing Committee's guidelines from 2023. And what this says, roughly says that 100% affordable housing will be provided at 30, 50, and 80% of area median income, which for us corresponds to 175,000 to 500,000. And this basically shows the Sammamish growth strategies for the next 20 years will be 100% focused on affordable housing. And it shows no market rate housing in that time period. Many have stated this may be difficult to achieve. So get to kind of three parts of a question. You can choose to address it how you want. Do you support only having affordable housing additions for the next 20 years? Do you believe in the comprehensive plan's growth target number can be achieved or exceeded with only affordable housing units, or that we'll have to diverge? And then in your opinion, how many affordable housing units do you think we'd actually get built from 2025 to 2044? And we'll start out this question. We're on number 4. We'll start with Karen, and then we'll go to Debbie.
So for the first part, support of affordable housing for the next 20 years only. Affordable housing for the next 20 years. No, I support a mix of different housing types. Our housing diversification toolkit provides for a variety of options with the idea of having different housing options and homes for all stages of life. So I know that we all want someplace where we can potentially downsize to. I do know that there are people that would love to have family members move closer. I do believe that we're going to need the supportive housing. By supportive, I'm talking about Merrill Gardens and Aegis for our older community members that would like to move from their home into a center that has some kind of assisted living support. So we're going to need a lot of different housing types. We need to do infill of middle housing. We need access to more ADUs and DDUs. I think that's going to be extremely helpful to us. I do want to see expansion beyond, say, just townhomes. Right now, if we did nothing in town center, we would have about 1,000 townhomes, which will add to traffic, which will add to schools, which will not give you any of the amenities that doing more homes would give you, which means you won't have that restaurant, you won't have that cool bar, you won't have that wonderful little shop that you'd love to go to because it doesn't pencil out. You need to have more homes and housing types in order to be able to achieve that. So I see a balance. And looking at it from the standpoint of what do we want? Not what we don't want. What do we want? What we want is we want housing that is attainable for people to stay in the community. I think people agree with me on that. I think that's what we want. We want it to be affordable to the extent that if it needs to be 80% AMI, 50% AMI, or 120% AMI, that we have that selection of choices and options for the community, because I think that's what the community needs and what we can provide and help provide.
Thank you, Debbie.
Now I got to regroup myself there. I clearly cannot support planning only for affordable housing in the next 20 years. That's putting your head in the sand. We are going to have plenty of market-based housing built as well. There's no, in my mind, a city cannot stop a developer or a property owner from...
Just one moment, please. We're having a little trouble with the monitor. Can we reset that to start at 2 minutes again? I'm sorry about that, Debbie. Go ahead and jump back in,
okay.
and we will go ahead
So
and
you
start it
heard
again.
me,
Is it
it's just
there?
the
It gets running.
timing.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, that's all right. So no, I don't support planning for only affordable housing. That would be foolish. Do I believe that Comprehensive Plan 2100 growth target can be substantially exceeded, or that affordable housing only units could be substantially diverged from? Well, it's a planning number. It's not going to be the actual number. We know that. No city gets exactly what they plan for. So this is a bit of an odd question. I do believe that over 20 years, it's possible that we could achieve 2,100 affordable units, because the comprehensive plan actually has a chart and a table in it that shows how we could achieve that. So if we work to plan for those specific needs, I think we have a reasonable chance at getting those over 20 years. Are we going to get them in the town center next year? No, but maybe we can get them over 20 years. In my opinion, I think that the 2,100 units is actually not an unreasonable amount for 20 years. That doesn't seem outrageous for a city that has as much land available as we do, and especially with the middle housing. Our single-family lots now can convert to triplex, duplex, fourplex, even more. And so we will get more units, even on our single-family properties. And I want to highlight the fact that I get that we have homeowners associations that will have restrictions on that, but first of all, we don't know how many. That's ridiculous. The city should know that, but let's just say it's what they're guessing is 80%. So 20% of the other properties are available to build, and they are large lots primarily. So I think there will be over 2,100 units eventually.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Sid, and then after that, we'll move to Michael.
Yeah, planning for only affordable housing for the next 20 years I don't think is feasible. The state and the region have both made it clear that actually delivering on housing is important. So if we were to plan for only affordable housing, nothing would get built. And I think the state would take exception to that. We need a mix, and one way to do that is by adding density in our urban cores. I really want to highlight what the state cares about is number of housing units, right? And what the community cares about is impact. It doesn't really matter how many housing units it is what does that do to our traffic? What does that do to our schools? What does that do to our stormwater? So if there's an opportunity for us as we're planning for our town center to say, hey, in this same built footprint, we could do stacked flats. We could do 5/1s. It's the same kind of building that you see at Sky Apartments north of Metropolitan Market. Then what does that do to our, what does that do to those impacts? And that's what we have in our SEIS. Take a look on our website. And what do we get out of that? We get more impact fees. We get more dollars that we can use to mitigate those impacts. We get amenities. We get more things to do on the plateau so you don't have to leave. Those sales tax dollars can stay in our community. And our kids get more things to do. Our seniors get ways to stay in their community after they've aged out of those big houses that have served them so well so far. And our college students get a chance to come back into their community in a way that they can afford. So I think it makes sense to offer density as a lever. The city doesn't build housing, but the city can offer some controls. And if we say, you get more density if we get open space, if we get park, if you give us affordability at a higher level, at a higher rate, I think it makes sense to consider that. And it's important to say, to my understanding, we're not saying you just get 4,000 units. It's you get 2,000 to 3,000 if, and then you get 3,000 to 4,000 if even more.
Thank you. Michael? And then after Michael, we'll go to Jisha.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with a comprehensive plan. I think it's fraught with problems. It doesn't comport with the TMP. It doesn't match the town center plan. The numbers don't match. So as I go through the numbers, it's really confusing. We have a 2,100 growth, and 100% of that is affordable housing. Below 50% is about 1,849. I don't know how that's going to happen without huge subsidies. So here we are, moving forward something which I think is just, I think we could do better. My plan would be start over and rewrite that. Make it realistic. Make it something that we can do and move forward with logically. Right now, is it 10%? Is it all of it? How much of this are we going to do? When are we going to do it? I also will challenge the thought that growth is inevitable. I don't know if I agree with that. So we are a city that, imagine a water pitcher that's almost full. And now we're going to pour more water into that. And when it overflows, we are going to have a mess. How are we going to deal with that mess? I think we have to pour very carefully. We do have capacity. I think it's either 6,000 or 9,000, depending on how you look at parcels. So can we do 2,100? Well, 2,100 is a target, though. The region is expecting that. They're not expecting us to go way over nor way under, because they have to plan all the infrastructure around that. So I'd be very careful with that. Also, the plan has zero market rate housing in it, in our growth plan. That doesn't make sense to me either. So I guess bottom line is I would start over. I would rethink the whole thing, make it realistic, make it pencil out. If I was a financer, I'd make sure that I had a business plan for the whole thing so it makes financial sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Jisha?
I think let's get to the basics. What's affordability? To me, affordability is I make a certain amount of money, I'm able to save some for emergencies, and I'm able to save some to invest so that I can have a better future. Now, when we look at affordable housing, it's not enough to plonk a building in the middle of nowhere and then tell those people, now go fend for yourself. We need three major things to have affordable housing. We need employment. We need employers nearby. If you put somebody in affordable housing in a place like Sammamish and say, go ahead, commute to Bellevue or Seattle for your job. Honey, but guess what? We don't have any transit. No, you got to buy a car. How does that make sense? That is not affordability. Do we have the ecosystem and the support system to truly support affordable housing? And if you look at the categories that we have 80%, we have 50%, we have 30%. 80% is people who make 80% of the median income. And maybe we can support them, maybe they will have a car. But what about people at 50%? What about people at 30%? Do we have the service? We don't have an emergency service in Sammamish. If we have an emergency, we are going to Sequoia or Redmond. We don't have emergency service. Do we have human services? We don't. If you look at where affordable housing has been successfully, like if you look at Kirkland, within a 20-minute non-car commute, they have employers that together support about 20,000 jobs. Our biggest employer is a city with 200 employees. How does that make sense for us? So to answer the question, no, I don't think we should look at only affordable housing. I don't think the number, like Michael said, is carved in stone. I think we need to revisit it. Does it make sense for us in the short term to say, yes, we will support all of this affordable housing? We need to go back to the drawing board. In terms of the town center, I don't think upping it to 4K makes sense at all, because we are not going to get the kind of affordable numbers we are expected to support.
Thank you. And we'll move on to Lynn, and then we'll go to Josh after that.
Thank you. This is actually a very personal issue for me, and the reason is because we saw the impact of what happened when we do have population growth and we don't build enough housing for people. The prices of those homes skyrocketed. In fact, just before the pandemic, from then till now, a lot of our home values have actually doubled in price. And what's the impact of that? Well, number one, our teachers can no longer live in Sammamish and afford to do that. I talked to my principal at Eastlake High School. He said only 10 out of 125 teachers live within a 30-minute radius of the city. Most of them commute over an hour to teach our children. To me, that is an unconscionable setup that other people are driving so far to serve our community. That's also an issue for our firefighters and police. They are also commuting from very far away to protect our community. That's why the firefighters and police have endorsed me, because housing is their #1 issue. Affordable housing is their #1 issue these days, right? So we cannot continue to be a community that doesn't contribute to the solution of this problem. Now, do I believe in the 2,100 affordable units? Absolutely. It is actually a very low number. Other cities have much higher numbers than we do. Mercer, I would say Issaquah has 3,500 as their target. Redmond has 20,000 affordable units. Bellevue, 35,000, right? We can achieve 2,100. We have to achieve 2,100 because we need it for the people who are already living here and working here. Every door that I knock, about 1 out of every 4 doors, there's an adult child living at home these days in their 20s and 30s because they cannot afford to strike a life on their own and actually have a place and to have a family, right? So I do believe this is a crisis. We should build 2,100, and I would support any realistic plan to deliver 2,100 affordable housing units, including, if that means, adding density to the town center to achieve it.
Going to Josh.
I think we do need to plan for much more than, I think we need to realize that there's going to be much more than the affordable housing units that are going to be built. There's a significant number of property owners here who are very likely to sell their land or split their lots and increase the density within neighborhoods, so we have to be aware that that's going to happen. We kind of get wrapped around the axle on this, on these growth targets. They are a planning number for us with regards to our infrastructure and our zoning regulations and land use. We're not going to hit that number. We never will hit that number exactly. It's a target we're kind of going for, but no one would have predicted the '08 recession or COVID or interest rates spiking or the tariffs impacting lumber markets impact housing more than city councils do. So we need to plan for a realistic amount of growth in Sammamish, which means we're gonna have to cut a check to pay for the infrastructure to support that. And so will those new homes that are coming in as they're getting built. As far as the affordability number, the 2,100 affordable units, that's a planning number. The comprehensive plan, which the council was awarded from FutureWise, the same organizations that's suing Mercer Island for their comp plan, we're in compliance with the state mandates on in the steps we're in right now to hit the affordability number. And up next comes zoning changes and development code changes. I say that because many people on the council are pushing up zoning the town center to 4,000 units as a way to hit the affordability number. And that's just not something that we have to do. The city doesn't build affordable housing or any housing at all. We plan for it. And this 4,000, I'm out of time.
Finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, thank you. Amy, will you close us out on this topic?
Thank you. So I support both market rate and affordable housing. We need more diverse housing, and we need more affordable housing for people that want to downsize. We need more workforce housing. I think that's very clear when the bomb cyclone hit and all our maintenance crews from the city all had to commute in, and that led to extended wait times for our residents to be able to get back on the road. Just to talk about why did we get 2,100 affordable units while other cities got a mix of affordable and market as their housing allocation. And the reason we got that is because our city has, since the time it incorporated, our city has only built 50 affordable units. and 0 in the 0 to 30 AMI income bracket. For comparison, Issaquah has built over 800. And so the state said, okay, Sammamish has built nothing. You guys will build 2,100 units. And I think that's really important because we just don't have them. We don't have them here. And I think that we do need to build them for, like I said, for workforce housing, et cetera, but also as just a good regional partner. Every city in King County is striving to meet their housing allocation. And as a region, we need to be part of that. We need to be at the table and to show that as a region, you know, we can solve this problem, and as a city, we aren't going to shy away and not do our part.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to question number 5 here, coming in the home stretch a little bit. And this is alluded to in some of the talking points. I will kind of summarize a little bit some of this. There's kind of like a big backstory here from the chamber. We'll pass out the questions so you guys can look at it. But the essential point of this topic is, and we just came up in part of the discussions, we have this 2,100 unit target for this affordable housing. There's also a very big issue around other market rate housing. You know, think about units in the category from, say, 500,000 to 1.4 million. You know, we were just talking about these affordable units at 30% to 80% of AMI or the area median income. You know, one notable point is that Sammamish has about 23,000 housing units, but 85% of those were permitted by King County and only 15% by Sammamish. And so the question really is that we have a surplus of these very large homes, and we have issues in both affordable housing and also in market rate housing. So let me ask it as some maybe more of a question here, and we have kind of 3 parts. We've printed them out so you can kind of think about them and choose to answer it how you choose, which is, do you think we should take some approaches for actually identifying what we need for economic, demographic, and workforce housing within Sammamish? Should we address that? Is there something we should do there? Are you interested in trying to address some of the core issues that we've been talking about here? And maybe I'll make it a bit of a simpler question, which is, the affordable housing is not the only topic for housing in the Sammamish area. So I think the heart of this question is, what is your general vision and plan for housing in Sammamish, both in the very near term and over the next 20 years? So we'll kind of make that the question there, and I'll give you guys a little bit of time to think about it. It's a complex topic to follow on from the affordable housing question. We're going to start in with Lynn, and then we're going to go to Josh next. So,
You guys should read this question. There's 3 questions. I'm not sure what it's asking. But let's talk about housing mix, right? I think we need a good housing mix in general, because we are a city that's 83% single-family homes, and that's why we're the wealthiest small city in America, because it's all locked up in our homes and our values, right? And there isn't a lot of option for someone who doesn't fit that mold of at this point, a 2-income tech worker, right, who is raising 1 or 2 kids at home. But if you don't fit that mode, we are a community that basically kicks you out because we don't have any other choices for you here, right? And that's why you see our senior population voting with their feet and leaving. We have actually one of the lowest percentage 65 and over population in the region. A lot of them end up going to Bellevue, Kirkland, maybe further out, right? And so and then the other side of it is our young population, those who are getting and starting their careers. They also don't have a place to move into early on in their careers, something that's a little bit smaller, potentially an apartment, right, or a condo that because they can't afford the large home. So I absolutely support both market rate housing of different types, not just single family homes, as well as affordable housing, right, for those at certain income levels, because I think we need both. And I think the last question is the one that I can very clearly interpret. It is, do I support a citywide housing target? My answer is yes. I think a comp plan that's 100% affordable housing is a little misleading, right? You have to build a certain number of market rate to achieve that affordable housing. And I think we should be honest with our residents of how much market rate we need to be able to achieve a reasonable amount of affordable housing production so that everyone knows what to expect. Because I think a lot of this controversy of the town center is because we haven't made that clear that affordable housing does require market rate housing in order to be achieved, so that it doesn't require a ton of taxes and subsidies in order to do so.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to Josh.
Okay, so question 1 is, do you support undertaking rigorous housing and needs analysis to quantify genuine economic, demographic, and workforce housing need factors within Sammamish? The other questions are a bit longer down here.
You're going to try that one?
Yeah. Okay. All right, so here's, I think we need to stop pretending that Sammamish needs to be a city that is a microcosm of the state. And all cities are not attempting to do this, right? We've got Redmond, who's going to get Redmond has light rail. Issaquah is getting light rail. Bellevue has light rail. They all have freeways. Sammamish doesn't. We need to think about housing as a region and not pretend that Sammamish is stuck on we are kind of on an island, but that we need to plan for all these different types of housing within Sammamish, because realistically we cannot accommodate them as well as other cities can. You have a significant number of apartments going down in Issaquah, where they've got, I think you said 30,000 target, or Redmond 20,000 unit target, because light rail's going there, right? And they can move a lot of people to Bellevue, to Seattle. Sammamish doesn't have that. So I think we need to plan within reality and not what we wish reality was. I think that's an important thing we need to do. And as far as providing additional housing for seniors or young families, I support the city making it easier for families to create detached accessory dwelling units so that seniors can move out, their kids can move into the home, or they can rent out their home. That's a way we can increase housing supplies so families can live here longer, and younger families can move in, because it's really difficult for families to move out once they've got their 3 kids or 4 kids. They're out of the house now. What do we do? And the market's not great for selling their home. So there are certainly things we can do. I wish I could go into a deep dive probably with Paul later on this question. There's 2 more here I didn't get to, and we'll let it go on to the next one who can take on question 2 maybe.
All right, and we'll switch over to Amy now, and then Debbie will be up next.
This is such a Paul question. I'm like reading this sentence multiple times. Do I support undertaking rigorous housing needs analysis? So I think the housing market is very complex. And we have done a lot of studies, and maybe not exactly the ones that Paul probably wants us to do. It is complex. There's so many factors that determine how much housing we need. It determines the cost of housing, factors of where to build. And, because it's so complex, I think by the time you analyze it, market could have changed. Interest rates is a huge factor on construction and whether or not people can afford to buy. And people leave, and I just think there's so many moving parts. I do think that the rigorous housing needs analysis, I think it would be challenging to undertake. But I do support his vision, and I do support that we need housing, not for people that live here and for the people that need to downsize.
All right, we'll move on to Debbie.
Thank you. Do I support undertaking rigorous housing needs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No, but I'm okay if you want to do it, Paul. Question 2, do you support conducting fair, accurate, and thorough research, et cetera, et cetera? No, but I support your right to do so, Paul. Based on those findings, would I support adding citywide housing target goals in the comp plan for both affordable and market rate shortages? No, we have a comp plan that's been adopted, and I would not. I am a firm believer that the market controls our housing. I don't believe that every city should have exactly the same ratio of housing types or housings for different ages. We're all different. We are a community of families. I think something like 60% of our households have children in them. It's families. That's why we have a lot of big houses. Some of them have multiple generations in the house. So I really don't support any of this. I want us to be ourselves. The Growth Management Act has a lot of conflicting goals in it. And that was done on purpose because each jurisdiction is its own self. We all are different. We have different characteristics. So the intent of the Growth Management Act was that each community would have local control and be able to define themselves as long as they complied with those policies. So some are going to have a lot of multifamily housing and big employers, and others are going to have a lot of neighborhoods and houses where families are raised and going to school. So I support an open process to talk about these things, and to make sure we're meeting the state requirements, which really are just a requirement to plan, not a mandate to build. That's what I support, and I believe in the Growth Management Act. I'll talk more about it later.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to Karen, and then Sid will be after.
You. So I understand the question, and I understand the desire to try to get accurate data to help us understand what exactly should we be planning for, what's going to really work. My concern with that is that the data will shift and change. I asked you Tuesday if you were going to stay in Sammamish, and by Wednesday you decided to put your house on the market.
Can we reset the timer again? I apologize
yeah.
about that. Didn't start. Thank you.
You bet. So I worry about the accuracy of that, and because we aren't able to dictate what in fact will be built when, and because we're not in charge of that, we don't build. So it just becomes problematic. But in terms of understanding what people want, I do think it's important to survey people and try to figure out what are the things that are most important, what are their drivers in life, what makes them happy, what makes them want to stay here. So understanding that at a core level, I do think that is important. I think what I want to express also is time and how things can shift. So for example, if we were to say encourage the development of more homes, like up to 4,000, for example, it could take us at our current rate of development 55 years to do that. It's about 50, 53 units a year. And that's based on our current production in terms of what's been happening. Now you might say, oh, well, COVID, and that had a huge impact. Oh, sure it did. But so did the fact that housing materials went up 40, 45%. The labor shortage is enormous and extremely difficult to find the type of qualified labor that you need in order to do development. The fact that our code is complicated, takes time to weed through, every bit of that factors in as time before you can actually see a financial return on your investment. So I think what I would urge people to understand and appreciate is that anything that we do as a city, it's considered, studied. We're looking at all of the angles and making sure that we don't have unintended consequences whenever possible. But we have the time to plan properly and to execute well. Thanks.
Thank you. Sid, you're up next.
So there's a lot here, but it does ask about economic analysis. And the city did conduct an economic analysis, at least of our town center area, in or at least fall of 2024. And they concluded that if we don't do anything in our town center, if we just go with the existing code, the 950 units that are yet to be built or permitted in our town center will be townhomes, right? That's 1,000 extra townhomes that will be coming that they're legally allowed to build right now. And when we talk about my vision for the housing in the city, I really struggle to understand how 1,000 big homes is the best outcome for our community, right? Those are big, they're expensive, they're gonna bring a lot of people, they're gonna bring a lot of cars, they're gonna bring a lot of students to put more pressure on our schools. So when I think about vision for the city, I'm really thinking about denser development, smaller units that still meet our state obligations, but that allow for more diverse revenues, that give us more amenities, that still bring people into our community, but they also welcome seniors who live here. I've heard very strongly from folks who live here that they want to stay in their community, but they don't have options. I've heard from our young people that they want to stay in the community they grew up in, but they don't have ways to do that. So we talk about vision for housing. I want to at least plan. Even if we go through these rules, the developer might say, you know what, I'm just going to do townhomes. But if we don't at least give them the option, if we don't try to pull those levers that the city has, that is the only thing we're going to end up with. So I think we should be planning for if development needs to come in, it should be where development is already going to go, or in existing asphalt like our shopping centers. And that's indicated in our comprehensive plan. I do think we've been doing this work because for the first time we do have, I think, a holistic view of growth in the city. And I'm very proud to have been a part of that.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to Jisha, and then Michael will close out.
Yeah. A three-part question, which the reading of it actually is a lot of common sense, right? Should we quantify how much housing we need, right? Nothing wrong with that, we should. But here's my problem. I think just like individuals looking at our neighbors and comparing ourselves with our neighbors, not a good idea. I think it works for a city too. We cannot compare ourselves to Issaquah or Redmond or Bellevue. Issaquah and Redmond, our immediate neighbors, have 100 years on us. They were incorporated 100 years before us. We are a very young city. And we do not have the mature services that they have. So when we talk about affordability, we should not be comparing ourselves to Redmond or Issaquah. We should be comparing to newer cities, maybe Newcastle or Maple Valley, who are much closer to us in terms of topography, in terms of services. They don't have any big employers. Well, they have access to freeways, so they have even that on us. They don't have transit like us. So we should be comparing ourselves to those cities, and we should not be looking at Redmond and Issaquah and saying they have it, so we should too. It doesn't work. It doesn't work on a personal level, it doesn't work at a city level. Every community has the right to decide what they want to be, how they want to look. And does having a dense town center make sense for us? Does it? We don't have transit incoming. King County's plan doesn't include us in their long-term transit plans. Can we widen our roads? We live on hillsides that are at landslide risks. So can we widen our roads? No. So we need to look at our existing environment, our existing infrastructure, and look at what makes sense for us. When seniors leave Sammamish, they're mostly going to Snohomish County. They're saying King County property taxes are crazy. We don't want that. We'll go to Snohomish. So we need to make sure that the ecosystem supports what we want to build and not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, I like this question because when you do things like this, you look at the question, you just get to say whatever you want to say. So, so we get to go off script. Thanks, Paul. Let's see. First of all, I believe that free market will always reign over what a central planning group will do, no matter how you look at it. So I believe in those forces. I'm also not a fan of government intervention. An example of that, so you economists in the room, think about supply and demand curve. We're putting affordable housing below equilibrium. Right there, you have a price ceiling. Price ceilings always cause shortages. Shortages cause everything to get more expensive. Affordable housing causes a system to be more expensive, period. I do think that the numbers are important. I'd like to know where these came from. In the original 2007 FEIS, it's got 2,000 in there. I don't know why. 4,000 as the alternative. Don't know why. I'd like to see all that. If someone has it, I've been asking for years. I don't know where that is. So if jobs drive that, I want to know where the jobs are. Jobs now, we have layoffs, we have cutbacks, we have things are pulling back. We also have schools that are saying enrollment is going down. So a lot of this doesn't make sense to me. I'd like to see that make sense. I do believe there's some of these imbalances, but we've got King County that did this to us for all these years, and now here we are. I think we can turn this around and make it viable for all citizens here, but I think we need to get out of the way and let the market take over, and I think we'll end up with a much better outcome.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to our final question, then we'll have 1-minute closing remarks at the end. And I think at the closing remarks, we can just go through the same order that we started, so that's straightforward. Okay, for the last question here, it's highly unusual that two persons from the same household may be serving on the city council together. This hasn't happened in Sammamish and is very rare in other Washington cities. And so the question is, if you have 7 people on the city council and 2 are from the same household, what are your thoughts about this atypical situation? And how do you think it might be looked at in terms of things like the Washington State Open Public Meeting Act that requires limits on how people are in what's called serial meetings? I'm not expert on what the meaning of serial meetings are, but it's a description of a meeting outside of the public forums. So that's the question, is what's your thoughts about that topic, and how do you think that should be thought about? We will start with Sid.
Okay, I will admit I was surprised that this was allowed, but my understanding is that different cities have the ability to pass a rule, whether or not, of like what kind of connections you can have if you're planning to run. I just spoke with a council member from Bothell, and I believe they have instituted a rule in their council rules of procedure that limit the connections you can have with other council members or with other staff to be allowed to run. In my view, I think that makes sense. I think there are reasons for rules like that to exist, but I will say Sammamish doesn't have that, right? Sammamish does not have a rule to prevent that, so I'm so glad I went first. Yeah, it's the question says it's an atypical potential situation. I think it's atypical for a reason, but we don't have a rule against it.
Thank you. Michael, you're next, and then we'll go to Karen.
Okay, gosh, I wonder who we're talking about on this one. Let's see, I will say that, do I think that's a problem? I personally don't, but, you know, I guess if there were rules against that, I would support, smarter minds. My wife is in the audience out there, so don't pick her out because she'll be embarrassed, but we don't agree on everything, believe it or not. I don't know if those of you that are married, if you agree on everything, hallelujah. But we're able to walk through each problem, solve those issues, and come to an end. I think that would be true if all of us here have to live that way on the council. We have to be productive, we have to put out the issues, we have to deliberate, get through them, and eventually it's our obligation to come to some agreement on that. I guess that's what I would expect of Kent and Debbie. I guess I would say more, what is the person you're voting for rather than what is the relationship and whose house do they live in. I find that this is an interesting question. I didn't expect this one, so that's all I have to say on that.
All right, we'll move to Karen next.
And that would be 2 of us. So let's see. I would say that my husband and I do not agree either on things. He comes from a different political house than I do. But I will say that what's happened is by living together for as long as we have, and as much as he was in one camp and I'm very much in another, that over time our views have melded a bit. And because we're able to share openly and honestly with each other about how we feel about certain things. And I think part of the reason why we are committed to the partner that we have is that we have shared values. So what I might suggest is that the value systems may be very similar with each other in terms of a married couple. I think that could create some interesting challenges with public meetings. I think it would be, there's actually some confusion in my head about, so does that mean like, if the 2 of you together, can can you be with one other council person, but then no other council person can be there? So otherwise, it's a violation of the Public Meetings Act. It's just a little confusing. When are you a spouse? When are you a council member? Does it ever shift? I just don't know. I don't have the answers to that. So I think that there's some questions that would need to get sorted out in order to walk a very fine line so that residents do feel represented by two distinct individuals.
All right. Next, we'll go to Debbie and then Josh.
Shouldn't I go last? No, I'm kidding. I think that's a very good point, Karen, and certainly we would abide by whatever meeting rules exist. And I would say you're correct, that if the two of us were together, we would only be able to have a third person, which is probably a good idea given that many votes on the council right now are 6-1. So maybe we can have 4-3 or 5-2 once in a while. So I am a retired CFO and I have 30 years of experience with local government, working with developers and with residents. I am supremely qualified for this. I watched the city over the last 2 years deteriorate into literally paying money to a developer for projects and work that should have been the developer's responsibility. I cannot sit at home and watch my husband get voted down on everything that matters in this city. So that's why I ran. And I wasn't going to bring that up tonight, frankly, but if you're going to press me with this, I will press you with that. Think about how inappropriate it is for 6 people to come to a meeting, have very little conversation, vote the same, and then lecture the audience about why they voted the way they did. It is a dysfunctional council, and I assure you, if you give me the honor of joining that council, it will be a better place.
Josh is next, and then we'll do Lynn.
I think each candidate should be judged on their individual merits and qualifications and not on who they're married to. I understand the concerns from people who might not be, read into all the intricacies of how local governments work, but this is not a unique situation in Washington. We've got a family down in Pierce County that plays musical chairs between the City of Tacoma Council and the Port of Tacoma. We have legislators and county council members that have married to each other. This isn't new. It's not unique. I would just encourage you all to get to know the candidates, understand what their positions, and figure out who is going to represent you best on the council. I don't think having 6 versus 1, as we've had over the last several years, is representing the city well. I think we need to have a balanced council. I have sat at a table with the 2 council members the 1 council member and candidate in question before, and I guarantee you they're going to disagree on the dais more than this current council does. So I personally don't have a problem with it, and if the voters end up having a problem with it, they can vote out one of them in 2 years if that's what they decide to do. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on it.
Lynn is next, and then Jisha.
First of all, I commend anyone who decides to run. It is a tough slog. To have to raise money, put yourself out there, knock on doors, take time away from your family. So thank you for doing it. And the only thing I have to say is let's let the voters decide, right? I know that, nationally, when we're seeing what's happening oftentimes in DC, we're not comfortable with it. But locally, it may be different, right? Maybe locally, we're okay with family members serving together, but I would really encourage voters to be transparent, or actually encourage our candidates to be transparent, and just let voters know that this is a married couple situation, right? We're not hiding anything. They're both named Treen. They're not, they're not like hallucinating. There will be 2 Treens on city council if Debbie gets elected, and as long as voters have that information in front of them, they can make an informed decision on whether they're comfortable with that, and I will respect that choice.
Jisha, and then we'll close out with Amy.
I did not expect this question, honestly. And I would like to say that if the concern is that a husband and wife being on the council at the same time will result in them making the same decision over and over again, then the current council, 6 people may as well be married to each other, because that is how the decisions are being made. But that being said, I absolutely concur with Josh that everybody must stand on their individual merit. I think Debbie is extremely qualified for the position she's running. She is a financial expert. She has a long and I think illustrious career, and I think Sammamish could do a lot worse than her. So I think Debbie being elected would one be the best things to happen to Sammamish.
Amy?
So I just wanted to address where it was mentioned that our council typically, or we may vote 6-1, and that is because we have similar values. And that is no different than prior to me being on council, when the council consistently voted 5-2 or 6-1. It just so happens that the council flipped. To address whether or not I think where there's a conflict of somebody married being on council with another member, yeah, I definitely think so, because there are issues that come up that may not be policy related, and I know that not all married couples agree with each other, and I know that my relationship with my council, my colleagues, are different than if I was married to a fellow council member. And we had to censure Kent Train earlier this year. And how would Debbie vote? I mean, if my husband was being censured, how would I vote? So I do think that there are legitimate concerns to having a husband and wife council member. Thank you.
Okay, we're wrapping up now, and we're going to move to the end statements. There'll be 1 minute per person at the end here. And we will start, just to make it more convenient and straightforward, we'll start again on the end here. So, Amy, yeah.
Thank you all for joining this evening. I think our city is at a pivotal point in its future. From the conversations this evening, I think it's very clear that the choice and leadership matters, and the direction that we take will shape Sammamish for generations to come. I don't think we fully explored a conversation in Town Center, but I think a lot of you know what's at stake here. I support responsible growth in Town Center and continued compliance with state law, protection of our natural environment, and building an inclusive community that fosters the meaningful connections that make Sammamish truly exceptional. I'm honored to have the endorsement of the Sierra Club Washington, the 41st and the 45th Legislative District Democrats. I'm also proud to be endorsed by State Representative Milan Tai, Janice Zahn from the 41st Legislative District Democrats, and the mayors of Issaquah, Redmond, Kirkland, and many others. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with all of you. I'm running as a write-in. People ask me why, and I'm running as a write-in because I registered late, and I registered late because as I was campaigning for a previous candidate, I found out that the current council is completely disconnected from what residents in Sammamish want. And Sammamish residents are asking for transparency, and they're asking for alignment with their views, and I believe that is the job of the council to do so. I'm running on 4 primary platforms that I think resonate with every resident I've spoken. I want growth, but I want sustainable, responsible growth, not reckless plans that don't make sense for us. I want transparency in our budget. I want to make sure our taxpayer dollars go to residents and residents first. I want to build a community where adults and seniors and teens can all gather, and I want a much more robust emergency plan so that we are not caught off guard with another bomb cyclone. Thank you. And if you vote for me, I will make sure that your voices are reflected accurately in the council. Thank you.
Thank you to the community for your time and engagement tonight. Elections are at their core about shared values. I'll share what's important to me. Environmental preservation, financial stability, more amenities, less congestion, more sustainability, quality education, pristine parkland, public safety as we are yet again the safest city in Washington, more options for our community, whether that's the places we can live, the ways we get around, the ways we recreate, or the ways we support each other. I think these values are reflected in my endorsements, including Washington Conservation Action, Sierra Club Washington, King County Democrats, King County Young Democrats, all 5 legislative district Democrats in Sammamish, and dozens of local, regional elected officials and community leaders. I think that makes a difference because as we answer the question of how we face these challenges that, to be clear, are not ours alone, do we work with our regional neighbors and partners, or do we insist that we're better off alone? We're fortunate to live here. If Sammamish is strong, then we are stronger as the East Side and as King County and as the state of Washington. And those values are important because they help guide us to the outcome we all want, a better, more sustainable, inclusive, responsible, and thriving community. Our diversity is our strength. Let's be stronger together.
My name's Josh Amato. I'm running for position 3. Thank you all for coming out here tonight, everyone in the audience and those listening at home right now. Thank you for sitting through this and listening to what we have to say about our community. And those who will listen later, thank you so much. I'm running because I think that we need to have a government that works for you and actually delivers results. My priorities are reducing congestion and increasing safety on our roads, getting emergency plans that are ready and able to be executed, and creating more recreational opportunities for our young people and adults and seniors, and by creating a community center for our city. We can do that by setting clear priorities on the council and having a responsible budget. If you want to dive deeper into any of these questions or ask me any others, you can give me a call or send me a text. My cell phone number is 253-722-9089. I'd love to hear from you and answer more of your questions. Thank you.
I want to go back to why I'm running, which is I want to represent all of Sammamish and not just the loudest voices in the room who show up at city council meetings. And when I go talk to people door to door, I hear about a lot of these gaps that people raise. There's our teens who don't have a place where they can feel like an adult, right, to go hang out or shop or buy a cup of coffee in town. There's the parent that I met who wants more transit because his daughter is in a wheelchair, and the only way she can get around is to get a ride from her parents, but she would actually like more transit access in the community. And then there's my teacher, my 10th grade biology teacher, Miss Campo, who wants a town center that's robust, that's walkable, and has an assisted senior living facility because she is 80 years old and she knows that she's gonna need it soon, right? Those are the voices that I've also heard as I'm knocking on doors. And if elected, I'm gonna represent a much broader swath of diverse voices across our community. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to use some of my time to go back to one of the questions and clear something up. My wife is a fine woman, a great mother, and she's always right. I just want to be able to go home tonight and be okay. I'm running as a public servant. Believe it or not, it's not for the fame and all the wealth that comes with this, right? So much wealth. But I do believe that our city government does not exist to improve the lives of special interest or developers. I really think that my obligation is to residents first. That's why I'm doing this. My commitment is to citizens. I believe in listening, representation, and trust in the residents, and those are my commitments. I really believe that the wisdom of everyone in this room is greater than this council for sure, and that would be my promise.
No, that's it. Thank you for being here, folks. My name is Karen Howe, and I am running for position 7 because this is just the best. I have learned so much about you and about the community that is just irreplaceable. It's terrific. I'm not paying attention to any of my notes. I'm going to talk to you about what's important, which is Susan, who I met yesterday. The Seahawks weren't doing great, so I went out doorbelling. And Susan moved to She downsized from Sahali, and she moved to, I don't know what they're really called. I call them Ichiro. It's not the right name, but it's the townhomes. And she's so happy there because she and her husband have a place just for them, and their entire community is diverse. She has people there from all over the world that she adores. I wish for you what her joy is, which is living in her community, aging in place where she is. And that's what I want to work on because that gives me joy.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chamber, for hosting, and great job, Brett. Thank you. I want to share a little bit about my experience with growth management. In 1990, I co-chaired a statewide initiative for growth management. My co-chair was Dave Bricklin, who at the time was the president of the Sierra Club here. The initiative failed, but it ended up being the last little push that forced the legislature to actually adopt growth management. If it weren't for that, we would have housing developments all the way to Snoqualmie Summit. So I support growth management in very many ways. Our only fear was that the language in the act would be used for developers to force density on every single community. And that is exactly what has happened. So I ask that you vote for a diverse council who has respect for the environment and is not going to be played by our local developers. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone staying to your time in the end. Thank you, all the citizens who showed up and everyone who's watching on the live stream. It's your participation, and these will be the folks that will represent you, and so we really appreciate you taking the time to learn their positions and spending your time with them. And I'll hand it off to Julie to close out for the evening. Thank you very much for letting me participate.
Thank you, Brett. Great job.
You need a mic?
I need a microphone.
You do? Okay. Can I grab one? Thank you.
I mean, I am loud. I could talk really loud, but.
It's on the screen, yeah.
Okay, so thank you all for being here. I know we had some pretty meaty questions that were sent to us, and then, of course, Paul, thank you for yours that kind of hurt everybody's brain a little bit. But on the behalf of the Sammamish Chamber, I want to express our gratitude to the candidates for their time, dedication, and willingness to step forward to serve our community. And thank you to everyone here tonight for engaging in this important civic process. We encourage you to stay informed, stay involved, and most importantly, make your voice heard by voting. If you'd like a copy of all of our questions, I have a sign-up sheet out there in the lobby. Just put your email on it, and I can send them all to you. I also, Paul had some handouts, I think. Were you putting some handouts out there? Oh, just a page. Okay. Awesome. We appreciate you spending your evening with us. We look forward to continuing to serve Sammamish together. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.